Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of our Bold Business Breakdown. I'm your host Sebastian Sanchez.
And I'm also your host Rebecca Nordquist.
If this is your first time listening, Rebecca and I are both marketing students here at NMSU and we both work here at the FinTech Lab powered by Newsenda Credit Union.
And we're very excited for today's episode because we have one of our very own professors from NMSU, Professor Dwight Kealy.
Yes, Dwight Kealy is a business law and a sports law professor, and recently he started teaching a personal finance class here at NMSU.
And aside from his teaching background, he also has a very extensive law background, which starts with his Juris Doctorate from Concord Law School in Los Angeles. He started his own practice that's been continuously going since 2014, known as the Law Office of Dwight M. Kealy. And he's also spoken a couple times at the Ethics Boot Camp. Going off of that, he also served for our country in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1996 to 2002. So we should definitely thank him for his service.
Yes, we definitely want to thank Dwight for his service. Along with his time serving, he also became an Arabic and a Spanish linguist. We are extremely excited to have him on and learn some tips for entrepreneurs and business owners to run a safe business. So let's take this time to be bold and shape the future. So as we talked about previously on our podcast, building stable spending habits can be difficult during the holiday season. But do you know what can be even more difficult?
What is that?
Protecting ourselves from identity theft.
You know, that is a really scary thing. I mean, we can get all the receipts, but sometimes, and specifically around the holidays, identity theft can happen right under our noses.
Yes, Becca, it's really unfortunate. But luckily, our friends at Newsenda Credit Union are offering a workshop called Identity Theft Solutions.
If you have more questions on how to protect your identity and your finances this holiday season, the first session will be on Thursday, December 5th from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
And if you can't make the first session, there's always the second session, which will be on December 14th from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
We will link more information in the show notes below on how to register, but for now, let's jump into our episode.
We are now here with our guest, Professor Dwight Kealy. Thank you so much for coming on our show today. Do you mind telling the audience a little bit about who you are, how you went from the hustle and bustle from LA down here to our humble city of Las Cruces, New Mexico, here at NMSU?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. As far as background, I actually grew up mostly in Southern California, and then I graduated from high school in South America, came back to the United States for college and grad school. I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I was actually an Arabic linguist, transferred to the officer side, and I was a platoon commander of infantry Marines. Then I went into the insurance industry for more than a decade, and during that time I actually went to law school, went into the private practice of law, did that for a while, and then, 5 years ago, I saw a job posting on Indeed.com that this university, New Mexico State University, was looking for a business law professor. And I remember just thinking, wouldn't that be the dream job? So I applied. Thankfully, they wrote me back, interviewed, and I've had a great time hanging out with NMSU students here in Las Cruces.
Just to quickly add on to that, I think you're one of the only professors who is actually allowed to have a hat in their LinkedIn profile picture. You know, you have your iconic NMSU hat.
I do.
And that's a part of you. And
that is true. I actually took that picture before I had the job.
Oh, really?
So when I came out for the interview, I got the hat from the bookstore. And then I was out there, and I think it was a day or two after I found out that I did have the job, and it's right in front of the Riverside County Courthouse where I'd go sometimes. And so I just did the selfie with my NMSU hat.
Wow.
At work.
Iconic photo. Yeah.
Well, we're so happy that you got that listing, and now you're able to work at NMSU, and so many students learn so much from you. So thank you so much, and thank you for your service in the Marine Corps as well. And just to get us started and on our track of what we're going to be asking today, a lot of our students are young entrepreneurs that listen to the podcast. And we work with Arrowhead Center, which is also surrounding a lot of entrepreneurial topics. So based off of that, we've heard a few of your talks about surrounding viability and how businesses can really stay alive. So could you explain your take on viability and maybe some tips to have a viable business?
Great question. So when I think of viability, well, first I'll just tell you, when an attorney thinks about viability, it's kind of weird, but we often think of fetuses because the famous Roe v. Wade and different cases involving when is this viable and what can state law do regarding that, okay? It's been readdressed here in the last couple of years, but that's still what attorneys think about. So viability, is this living, can it sustain itself on its own?
Yes.
So as far as entrepreneurs, especially starting out, you're probably just looking at revenue and expenses. Can I live, right? Can I pay my bills and feed myself long enough for my revenue to sustain me, right? So that's the big picture when it comes to entrepreneurs and viability. What I like thinking about as far as viability also, though, is a bigger picture that involves all stakeholders. So we all like to have the lowest possible price from our suppliers, but we don't want our suppliers to go bankrupt. We want the lowest possible insurance premium, but we want our insurance companies to collect enough money to pay claims. So when I think of viability, I think of living, but also not just selfishly living and winning, but also, hey, can we all sustain and work together and share and grow for all different stakeholders, not just you at the expense of everybody else?
Interesting. Yeah. Going back to ethics and your background and being a lawyer and whatnot, how do you assess that? How do you figure out the solution to that when there's your lawyer side and your ethical side?
That's tough because legal ethics is really its own area of law. And so sometimes doing what the legally ethical thing to do is not always maybe necessarily the right thing to do. So sometimes there's a famous case involving whether or not you should betray the confidences of a client to maybe save the lives of others or to let family members know where the bodies are buried because your client, committed murder of these people. But we have this duty of confidentiality to our clients. Yes. So that could be a difficult context as far as what's the legal thing and then maybe what's the ethical thing.
Do you ever walk away kind of thinking like, oh, we should have gone for this way, or maybe just feeling kind of like, ooh, like this isn't right with me ethically, or have you ever?
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I've had to write different things for clients. I'm being paid to represent their interest, and my interests is for them to do well and represent their interest vigorously. Yes. So I have a duty to vigorously represent their interest.
Yeah.
But part of it is deciding what area of law that you want to go into.
Yeah. No, yeah, we actually, at that conference, there was another woman who was speaking, and she talked a little bit, she was also an attorney, and talked a little bit about how, when you're representing your client, you have to go with them because there's a duty to that client, even if maybe it's not what you maybe agree with, which is definitely a super difficult thing to navigate. And I think that's why she was having this whole speech about that. So yeah, that's super interesting. And I think that comes up a lot in the subject of law. But just with businesses, I think young entrepreneurs also don't really know how to navigate what business or legal structure is correct for their situation. And it's a whole, people have like a whole course on just the legal structures. But with this being said, if somebody who is like hypothetically starting a business and they were one individual, what legal structure would you maybe suggest as one for that person?
Great question. As far as a general principle, well, let me back up also and be honest about young entrepreneurs, especially college age. So when I was college age, I had no assets. So if someone sued me for $100,000 or $1 million or $1 billion or $1 trillion, they are going to be disappointed, right? So some of these liability questions, they become more serious as you have more to lose.
Yeah.
Okay. So the ways you can limit your liability, we can talk about entity formation and also transferring some of those liabilities through insurance. So that's just big picture. I will also say a disclaimer, look into the camera, that this is not specific individual legal advice for someone. You should probably seek your own legal counsel for your own specific situation. This is an educational environment. We're talking about general principles.
Absolutely,
okay?
Yeah.
But the LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. So if you have a sole proprietorship, so it's just you, you're starting your own business, you are personally liable for the financial damages you might cause by that business. So, and same with the partnership. Okay, so if the two of you form a partnership, I'm going to say that you are going to be a roofer and you are solar panels. Okay, roofing, solar panels. Cue the romantic music. All right, look at each other. Partnership. Boom. Business partnership. Okay, so we have a business partnership, and you have roofing and solar panels, heavy roofs, and you're making billions of dollars. What we're going to find out 5 years from now is they're too heavy and all the roofs collapse. You're going to get sued.
Yeah.
Okay? So in a partnership, you can be personally liable, which means your personal assets can be at stake. Your vacation homes, right? Your savings, anything that's not protected from bankruptcy, different topic, is potentially available to pay plaintiffs that might be injured. So if you want to limit your liability from a sole proprietorship or a partnership, then what you could do is limit your liability by a corporation or an LLC. The LLC and corporation limits liability just to the assets of the LLC. So instead of having your roofing and solar business where you are personally liable, you could say, let's each contribute, let's say $1,000 into this LLC. Well, then the total assets of this LLC now is $2,000. Worst case scenario, you get sued for millions of dollars.
But
The most that you would be at stake is the assets of the LLC.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to keep your home, you get to keep your other accounts and stuff. So that's a way that a lot of people try that.
I won't lose my vacation home. Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought up the partnership as well, because the second part of the question was going to be about like adding people, like adding a partner.
So say like in this example, like with our solar business, if we wanted to really expand our business and kind of get more locations, would you say that the same legal structures apply, like a sole proprietorship or like an LLC?
Great question.
Student, yeah.
So as far as a partnership goes, how do you want to add more partners, and also do you want to increase your liability to all these different people? I will mention this also about partnerships, the concept of joint and several liability. Joint liability means I can sue all of you partners jointly, or several liability, I can pick the one of you and sever, right? And just go after the one person who has the most assets. So if you have a partnership of 2, or let's say 50, and you have one of you that's a billionaire, maybe the plaintiffs will just go after that one person. In a partnership, you have joint and several liability, and your personal assets can be liable for the assets of the business. By choosing an LLC, it's easy to add members and stuff, add ownership. Same with a corporation, right? You can give someone shares, right? So if you want more investors, you want more owners, you can actually sell more shares. For a sole proprietorship, I can't sell more of myself, right? That's odd. In a partnership, how do we sell this? And so the LLC and corporation makes it easier sometimes to raise capital while also limiting liability.
He's going along with kind of like, if, say we were to get sued, say I had a location in a different state, and that person, for example, like you said, they wanted to sue that one person with the most assets. Can they say they're in California and they wanted to sue that person in Nevada? Is that possible, or would that?
Great question. So that's getting into a variety of different jurisdiction questions. Are we going to state court? Are we going to federal court? So how do we drag this LLC into court? We're going to say, well, are they located here in this state, or did they purposely avail themselves to the forum state? So there's going to be some jurisdiction questions with that.
No, yeah, there's so many different aspects to law and who you add to your business and how your business changes, because it's not going to be sometimes it's not going to be just you. It's going to be you a lot of the times with your employees and with a partner or whatever the situation is. And I think that goes based off my next question for you, which is, we've all worked for an employer or a manager, and we've all been an employee somewhere. Most people, not all, I shouldn't say all, but most people have. Going off of that, I think we've also had maybe some poor managers, or the business is maybe not one that works for us. And how would you recommend that business owners stay in line with employment laws and run a business that people want to work for?
how to be a manager that someone wants to work for.
Don't be a horrible boss.
Or
I'm
just
kidding.
just running a business in
Yeah.
general that people like wanna work for, that, because I think a lot of the times like we don't really go with the labor laws that are actually technically in place that really protect people and make people feel like they want to work there, you know?
Well, as the attorney, I should say you should obey labor laws
Oh,
and talk to your employment law attorneys to make sure that you're not doing something illegal. You can get in a lot of trouble for those things. But just pick a big picture. How do you be a boss that people want to work for? And a couple things is, do you care? Right? So some of you have maybe worked for a company that you feel like you almost care more about the health and success of the company than the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so owners need to obviously be invested. They are financially, and they are going to benefit from this. So I think employees like to see an enthusiastic boss who cares about them and the success of the company, right? We want to do things of value. We want to do things that win and that we enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big piece of just being a good manager, that you're not a jerk. Let's talk about some basic things. You care about people. You want to see them succeed. I will mention this in terms of viability also. So when I think of viability, I've heard some people, managers, and also this comes up in relationships, unfortunately at times, where, hey, do I want to invest a lot into this employee? Because if I do, they're just going to leave. And so, no, I want to not share. I don't want to give them the different benefits for advancement, because then they'll just leave. Well, I want people to thrive.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to, and then that's hard to say as an actual boss, right? Because you're training and investing in someone, and then they might go and compete with you. So we have a variety of different contracts and non-compete. But big picture, I think we appreciate people that value us and want us to see, and want to see us do well.
No, yeah, that's a great answer to that question. And I think the reason I brought that one up is really just because I think obviously they should be complying with their labor laws, but that's, I think, sometimes just to get by as a business owner and not really like for the actual happiness of the employees and how the business actually should run for them, because it doesn't just start out as, sometimes it starts out as just you, and then it goes to like now you have all these employees that you have to get help from that help run your business. So that was really why I wanted to frame it based off of that. But
And just going along with entrepreneurship, it takes a lot of different skills when it comes to entrepreneurship. I think an essential one is just learning how to be able to work with people. I mean, you work with something we learn in like sales is just being able to handle different kinds of people with different attitudes. And so I guess my question to you is, what sorts of risks should young entrepreneurs be willing to take when it comes to their business?
The easiest answer would be for me to say what risk you shouldn't take.
Okay.
Don't go to jail, right? Don't do what you know is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you know that what you're doing is wrong, you know it's illegal, you know you might, if you're giving false information, for example, to try to raise funds, we could have some SEC problems for a variety of things. So I guess as far as risk to avoid, my first one would be don't go to jail. And with that, what do I mean? Because there's so many laws that could be overwhelming. Well, don't do what you know is wrong. So a lot of criminal law involves the intent. So you actually knew what you were doing and knew what you were doing was wrong. Not always, but often. What other risks to avoid? I think that's also just a big picture as far as financial risk. What do you have to lose? Timing. Often when people are older, they become more risk adverse. But part of that is just they maybe don't want to work as hard as they did when they're younger. They don't want to risk losing the stuff that they've built at this point, and they've worked so hard to develop it. There's just so much to lose that they're more worried about it. So I think when you're young and don't have as much to lose and you have the energy and time, it's actually a great time to take those risks.
Would you say you're someone who's still willing to take risks?
Yes, but at the same time, I did decide to be a college professor instead of in the private practice of law. So my life is not as risky as it was 5 years ago.
More secure, yeah.
And even just going off of risk, I mean, we know that you're more focused around law, but now you teach personal finance. So can you give us a little bit about that in relation to risk and what you think about, because we had a question recently about investments and whether or not you should invest. Do you know what your take on just risk in general around that as well, around investments?
Yes, I like taking risks. So I'm still a risk taker when it comes to investing. If you don't invest, you're guaranteed, a 0% return on your investment. Yeah. With inflation, that means you're actually negative. You're losing money if you're just saving cash, right? So yeah, I would say take risk. I would say just do it. You can diversify to a variety of different things. I think studies show that we can check the numbers, but I believe less than half of professional money managers beat the S&P 500 regularly. Oh, wow. So it's kind of interesting that you're like, hey, I want to be a stock picker and I want to take risk and I want to win a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But realistically speaking, people with finance PhDs, right, your professional money managers, they often don't beat the S&P 500. Mm-hmm. So if you invest in the S&P 500 blindly with an ETF, mutual fund, something like that, and continue to invest in that and save over a very long period of time, historically speaking, who knows if it continues, but that ends up doing as well or better than many professional managers. I have, I think, somewhat of an interesting story about stock picking that involves me and our local area. So something that's kind of interesting about me, I talked about taking risk, and yes, I'm interested in individual stock picking, but I also disclose that for most people, let's be honest, it doesn't work. But everyone talks about their wins. No one likes to talk about their losses. So here's my story. I was probably 13, 14 years old in Southern California, and my dad took me to a stockbroker so that I could use some of the money that I saved up to buy a couple stocks. Right, so I'd saved my lawn mowing money and that sort of thing to buy something, and we had to go to a stockbroker at that time. So I went to Payne Weber, Jackson Curtis in Long Beach, California, and the stockbroker recommended 2 different companies, and I think I did $500 in one company, and $500 is a lot for me at that season, or for a lot of young
14,
people.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I worked hard for that.
Yeah.
And in the other one, I put $270, okay? And so let me fast forward and think about what you could have purchased in 1984.
At your age?
Or just in the year 1984.
A lot.
You could have purchased Apple. Mm-hmm. You could have purchased Intel. I mean, think of these different companies that you would have loved now looking back to say, oh, I purchased that company.
At a very low price.
Yes. Yeah. And I think people say, imagine investing $500 with Warren Buffett once upon a time. Fast forward, it's $1 million now, right? Mm-hmm. There's all those stories that we like to share.
Early, yeah.
Well, fast forward until probably 1997, and I get a letter from this company that says, hey, you know what? We've had reverse splits, which means we're giving you fewer shares for the shares you had because we're doing so badly. Oh, gosh. And finally, they said, you have a fractional number of shares. You don't even have one share. We're getting rid of shareholders like you, so here's a check. And it was a check for maybe $30, $70. So you might be thinking, wow, 270. Did that become 270,000? No, it became 70 or 30, something like that. Nice lunch, dinner money or something. And I didn't really think about it much until flying out to interview for my job here at NMSU, because the name of the company was El Paso Electric.
Oh wow.
For those that don't know, that is our electric company here in Las Cruces. I pay a bill to them. I actually teach a class this semester in a classroom sponsored by El Paso Electric.
Yeah.
It's the El Paso Electric classroom.
Any place that you rent or anything, you have to do your electricity bill through El Paso Electric. That's crazy.
That's right. I feel like I contributed to the classroom.
Yeah. You did. Your share made a difference.
Share. So no, I didn't invest in Apple or Intel in '84. I invested in El Paso Electric.
El Paso is pretty big here, though, locally.
Yes, it's our local airport, and it's obviously, I believe, a great company. I haven't looked at their stock since they got rid of me as a shareholder.
So you didn't realize this really until you moved back, or like until you moved here and started teaching?
No, so I have this childhood memory of El Paso Electric as this company that I would get their annual reports, and that was fun for me to look at.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, in order to check stock prices at that time, you have to look in the newspaper for your company and then chart it and see what's going on. It's not like just checking your phone these days.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of off my radar.
Yeah.
Often, also during that time, I go to college, grad school, and I'm in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you just kind of forgot about it. It just, yeah.
And then I get a letter from them. I'm like, oh, what happened to this company? And it's like, oh, you're done.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no.
What a small world. It always ends up looping back around full circle.
That's also, I think it's really cool how your father was just like kind of so open to you investing at such a young age as well. The $500,
Yeah.
My parents would have been like, "Are you crazy?" But
No, for us, they kind of made fun of me in a way where, hey, if you're going to go to Disneyland or something, they need to give us some sort of money for snacks or food. And the joke in our family was that they give my brother $20 and he's going to spend the $20 on food. And Disneyland food, I mean, you can't buy anything at Disneyland for $20 now. But back in the day, they're like, Dwight's going to come back with $20.
oh,
I'm like, I'm going to drink water and I'm going to come back with $20.
Hold on to that, yeah.
I could buy part of El Paso Electric with that $20.
Yeah,
Lo and
that's
behold.
awesome.
Or Apple or Intel or something else.
But that's a great story because there's a lot of companies now that it never ends. There's going to be the next Apple or like it was so big at that point and now it's, now it's even bigger because of it. But like even El Paso Electric, like it started out really small and now that's the only place you really can go for your electricity bill.
Right,
So-
but that is something completely separate than how it is as a investment. So I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah. So there is that component of how important it is to take that risk because you never know that share that's $1 could end up being
Hold on,
worth
yeah.
so much more in the future.
Right, on the positive side, but then again, I like to point out that no one likes to talk about their losses, right? Especially if they're coming on a podcast. I
Yeah.
would much rather say that I invested with Warren Buffett or Apple or Intel in '84, but no, I went with the local utility company, which is a better, more conservative investment
Yeah.
than some sort of unknown tech company,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's more
So this
secure.
is a growing area and people need electricity. That shouldn't lose,
Oh no.
but sometimes it does.
It did in that case, but yeah. So I guess kind of, did you know were you aware of that security when you first invested, like that it was a electric company, like in the future it'll grow? So
Yeah, so that was the idea when I was talking to the stockbroker, and that was
Yeah.
his job to pick stocks, and I was looking for something that would grow, and obviously I didn't want to lose this hard-earned $270. And so I wasn't looking for something very risky, and so he suggested, hey, this utility company, they were, I believe, paying a dividend. You need electricity. This is a growing area. There's a lot of great reasons to invest in it. I didn't look at PE ratios or debt or anything else that we would look at today,
yeah.
but I imagine my stockbroker did.
Yeah.
Maybe I did too. I don't remember.
It definitely makes sense. I mean, at the time, like Apple was new. Like for example, technology was kind of risky. We didn't know where it was going at the time. So of course, if you wanted more security, you go for electricity and a developing, now one of the biggest cities in the Southwest region. Yeah.
Right. Another thing that's interesting about no one likes to talk about their losses. You can look at the quarterly reports where the government lists all the different companies that have been delisted. So there is actually a report that says, hey, here's a symbol of a company that people once purchased stock in and it had big hopes and dreams for that is delisted now, which means it's not publicly traded. There could be a good news part of that story. Maybe it was bought out by someone else, absorbed by another company. Maybe they took it private. But a lot of those stories are someone had hopes and dreams and now it's worthless. So it's just a good reminder if someone is thinking about stock picking. I hope it works out well for them. But statistically speaking, you need to be aware that there's a chance that they get rid of you as an investor and give you, at least I got a small check.
Yeah.
A lot of times it just goes away.
So what did you actually use for that money for the $30, the $70?
So I do know the other company. I'll mention that. That's a slightly better story. The $500, that was in a phone company, GTE. So AT&T, GTE, those companies at that time. And then by the time I got to grad school, I actually sold it for a profit, and I used that to do a graduate school program.
Oh wow.
So I got to travel and go internationally.
Like,
That's awesome.
With
use
that
it to your
money.
own advantage. Yeah. Personally, me, I'll probably just use it on like some food, some new clothes. But you know,
I probably did that with the $30
The $30,
that
yeah,
I got
yeah.
from El Paso. It's like, all right.
But that just shows that risk is, high risk, high return.
Yeah.
You can eventually, do something like that with your $500 can turn into something a lot bigger.
So with your knowledge now in business law and finance and sports law as well, and personal finance, would you go back to any of the businesses that you've had in the past and kind of work through them again?
Do things differently?
Yeah, do things differently.
That's hard to say because you're in a different place, different time, and a lot of times we don't talk about the impact of luck. Everyone wants to say something works out well and they're a genius, and it didn't work out as well, and so you wonder what they didn't do right as far as their failures. But sometimes there's just different timing, business cycles, great recessions, COVID, things that maybe were somewhat unpredictable, and so you can't really know for sure. Management-wise, maybe more empathetic, and along those lines, being a better manager or person, I think we grow and develop, hopefully, over time. But big picture, thankfully, I avoided large mistakes or litigation, and I could say it's because I did things right, or it could be partly luck, as a number of businesses do get sued, or people are in car accidents, right? It's just an accident. People get sick. Some things are unpredictable, and we do the best with what we're given.
It's just interesting to hear how you overcame some of maybe like the challenges that you maybe had faced throughout like your experience, and it's interesting to hear that. And I think nowadays, though, I think a lot of our challenges are around AI because it's such a new thing, and just technology and like keeping our privacy and stuff like that. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is how would businesses kind of, or just people in general, how would you recommend they navigate maintaining their privacy within their business and within their lives?
Great question. That's difficult. Everything's out there.
Yes.
Everything's out there. And so maybe we just have to acknowledge that. Some people I know are very careful. They try to just use cash instead of credit cards because they don't want to be tracked. They don't want to be a part of different social media platforms because they don't want to be tracked. Other people embrace it because they say, hey, I want Facebook to give me all the ads and information that I like, and so I want all the cookies, and I want you to know all about me because then you give me a better user experience. So I know as far as the privacy, that's there.
Yeah.
I guess we could joke and say this. I heard this once upon a time. Don't do anything wrong. And that's humorous because everyone makes mistakes, but there's certain things. Think about it. It's like, do you want that picture taken?
Yeah.
There's nothing private anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Right?
always there. Yeah.
So do you want to post that because it's out there? Of course, now with AI, you could say it was a deep fake.
Yeah, deep fake.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't say that. That was the audio or the voice. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who created that?
Yeah.
That's not me.
No, yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's been a lot of like things in the media, especially that people have used that and it become convincing. And I mean, it's kind of unfortunate in some ways people have used it, but yeah, certainly AI is out there and it's here to stay.
Yeah.
We just have to work with it. I mean, do you think copyright law? I mean, kind of going on to copyright law. Do you think copyright law is at threat because of AI?
Oh, this is a huge area. So all my colleagues would want me to write a peer-reviewed, article about this. So you want me to just shoot from the hip because I love copyright law. So as you know, I write exam questions, and I find them on places like Quizlet and Chegg.
Yes.
And Chegg is a publicly traded billion-dollar-plus company that is making money off my creative work. So that's not necessarily AI, but I believe that's a problem. And so there could be litigation arising out of that. I will warn students about that too, because it's actually the students who upload the exam questions, my creative work online. And if you read the fine print, that no one does, but if you read the fine print before you enroll in something like Quizlet or Chegg, you agree to indemnify and hold harmless and pay attorney fees for these places like Quizlet or Chegg. So if, say, a professor does end up suing Quizlet or Chegg and recovers financial damages for copyright infringement, the students could be responsible for reimbursing Quizlet and Chegg.
Oh, wow.
I can testify that was one of the questions on your exam, which, I mean, I liked it because it made me actually read the Chegg's, terms and conditions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I learned from an exam. Usually an exam you go in having to show what you know, but, I learned more, so.
Well, I know that's even just a topic within English professors. I, talking to people that work around AI, they have challenges with, the English department's usually the ones that usually are like the most angry because, they want people, when they give you a prompt, to write a paper that you wrote.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the challenges specifically around AI. And that's interesting to get your take on specifically, do you have anything around specific like papers and like AI papers that are being written now?
Perhaps?
Yes. So for ChatGPT, it is an amazing resource. So for my MBA course, for example, my MBA course about business law, they had to write a paper, and I encouraged some of them to use whatever resources they could find, because I said it needs to be good, and I want you to submit this somewhere for publication. But you need to know what this says, and you need to check it. Because what ChatGPT does, it's not necessarily plagiarism, because it's something new based on what it found out there. But sometimes it hallucinates. So some attorneys have gotten in trouble because they've used ChatGPT, and there'll be a great memorandum or brief, and it will cite different cases, and it will cite real people and maybe real courts, but it's not actually a real case. It doesn't actually exist. And so that's a problem for attorneys or anyone who's just relying on ChatGPT because it sounds good, but it might not be true.
Yeah.
And so part of the work, I think, the new job of scholarship, if someone's going to use ChatGPT, is, hey, is this right? Is this wrong? And also what's missing? So especially thinking about papers and writing in the past, that blank sheet is so intimidating when you have to start writing. So it's like, what's my outline? What am I going to say? And that's a huge part of the original thinking process that is going to be kind of lost in a lot of situations, because it's so easy to say, ChatGPT, give me a rough draft, give me an outline, and it will fast, right? That can save me a day of thinking. But will we lose some of that new creative thought?
Yeah. I think that's exactly what the scary thing is like, are we losing some of that
Creativity.
The creativity and you actually critically thinking for yourself instead of having a computer generate it for yourself? And there's a lot of topics around how it's a tool, and that, the people who support AI, they claim that it is a tool, and there is a lot of resources that it provides. But that's super interesting that you say that it sometimes hallucinates and brings up sometimes the wrong information.
Just makes up a case. I never even know that.
Because it pulls it up from the internet, which sometimes isn't always credible. It's not always a credible source in itself too.
The internet,
Yeah.
Going back to that.
And definitely don't trust everything on ChatGPT, because it might not be plagiarism. It might be completely made up.
Yeah. This topic is something that is super interesting right now, just because it's such a new thing, and AI is such a recent thing. It's only been around for like the last year now. So, yeah.
I mean, AI has been around for quite some time, but in this format where it's so like mainstream, I guess we can call it, where everyone's so open to use it, or just aware of it. Yeah, this is certainly the first time.
I did use it in my personal finance class just a few weeks ago, because people had to do a little summary about what I talked about in class, which ChatGPT wouldn't know what I talked about in class. But then I said, if you want, you could use ChatGPT and make it a sonnet or a haiku. And some took me up on that. And so it was kind of fun because they had to give the information to ChatGPT that this is what he talked about. now write it as a limerick
Yeah.
or a sonnet.
575. Yeah.
And it's pretty, that would be a lot of work
Uh-huh.
for students to spend the time and do that, and completely unnecessary, maybe in a personal finance class, but it was kind of fun.
It makes it fun. Yeah.
So yeah, this topic's a little, can go on forever. I could talk about AI all day, and law in general, just all the things that, all the components of it and how it relates to just our everyday lives, and going off of business, and how to run your business safely. But we want to make it a little bit lighthearted and fun, so we're going to play a little game. And some of these questions are trivia questions, but some of them are personal questions. So we're just going to have you pick a number. Not too personal, but just,
Okay. Are you picking one too, or is this just for me?
This is for you. You're our guest.
Okay, I got number 1.
Number 1.
What's question number 1?
Question number 1 is, it is about a month ago, you agreed to come on the show. We posed an offer to you to come onto the show, and you accepted it. Would this be considered a legally binding agreement or contract?
Well, one of you is currently in my BLOT class, so I'm going to totally switch the table here and look at Sebastian. What's required for an enforceable contract? You said offer and acceptance.
There was an offer, there was an acceptance, there was consideration.
Was there consideration?
Well, when I first.
What is the bargain for exchange? Am I getting paid for my time here? I didn't realize that.
Well, there was
We gave you a cup.
Oh no! But I didn't know that, so I believe this is a gift.
The consideration was that split second where I was just like, "Can you be on our podcast?" Yeah, that's your consideration.
I'm not sure there's any quid pro quo bargain for exchange. So I don't think you would have a right to sue me for breach of contract if I said, "Hey, I can't make it."
No, yeah, of course I can. No, yeah.
Well, then it's probably not an
Oh,
enforceable
legally
contract.
binding. Okay, it's
Good job, by the way. You should get extra credit. But I didn't offer it to you.
Well, did you have a assets of defense? I mean,
That would be the last question. If we then did have an enforceable contract, would there be any defenses? And I would have to think about that.
Well,
No duress, undue influence.
I mean, I have your signature right here. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
We do have it in email form.
An email form.
Oh, that's
Oh.
good. That's good enough.
So just to sum it up, it would not be a legally binding contract.
I don't think so.
This is out of your will to help students out.
This is a gift. This is just for fun.
Yeah. Yes.
Please
No,
don't
it
sue me
is.
if I don't show up again.
No, we will not. It was just to really get an idea of like how to know if something's a legally binding contract, and that was a great answer to the question. We were.
And good job. He sits in the front row.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, you should get extra
So-
credit.
Are we gonna do another?
Yes, one more.
One more. Pick
Okay.
whatever number you'd like.
Okay. Well,
Well, whatever number
whatever
you
comes up.
This might be our toughest question.
Number 2.
Depending on what you get. Number 2.
Or you
Do you
can
wanna
pick a
answer?
better one if you don't like number 2.
Oh, well,
It's your show.
This question might be a little hard.
Okay.
What's your favorite restaurant in Las Cruces?
I like actually Wex on University
Wex, yeah.
for breakfast, the Huevos Rancheros
Wex.
with green chili.
They're eggs Benedict.
Yeah.
Are you a red chili or
I'm green.
You're green chili. Oh, me too.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you, Becca?
I like green just because I feel like you go out of New Mexico and there's no green chili really as much. But I think I'm starting to like red chili more. As a kid, I was like, red chili looks kind of gross, and now I love it. I think that's typically what I choose, strangely enough.
Dishes,
Yeah.
Christmas is good, but when there's a little
yeah.
more green chili than red.
I guess it depends on the chili too. So.
Right. Now, it was interesting coming to New Mexico from California because if you get red salsa in California, it's really tomato based.
Yes.
And if it's green, it might be tomatillo or lime. So here, if it's red chili.
Yeah.
If it's green, it's green chili. So it's different. It's delicious.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
I guess considering California, we're talking about green chili now. Anaheim's right there. Anaheim's also known for their green chili. I don't think I've ever tried Anaheim green chili. Would you say that's the same as hatched green chili, or is that?
You know, there's so many experts that I'm not going to stick my head out on the
I'm
difference
sure there's
between
some
Anaheim and
And hatch.
I hear we're the Napa Valley of chilies here, hatched in New Mexico. So
Wow.
I don't want to compare Anaheim chilies and
We'd have to find a hatch a green chili business owner, perhaps, or some.
We have
Yeah.
some. I know
Oh,
some.
yeah, yeah.
I know some.
No, yeah, I think because I've had some food out in California, and it's more like kind of seafood, Mexican food a
Right.
little bit, and I think here it's a little bit. I don't know, that it's just different. It's just so good here. I don't know.
It's good. I do miss some aspects of the Baja California, Southern California fish tacos.
The tacos, yeah.
Here, Southern New Mexico, I joke that the Mexican food, there's some pain involved. There's a little more heat here.
Uh-huh.
And also it's just heavier. The cheeses,
Yeah.
the sauces, it's
Yeah.
heavy.
I had actually some family members come to visit, and they ate at Chopes. We took them to Chopes, and they were they didn't know what they were in for, and then they
gosh.
were very unhappy about that later. But yeah,
Well, lastly, just kind of end it off. Are there any final thoughts that you would like to add? Any shout outs? Anything you would like to add?
I'll do a shout out to you two. I
Oh.
appreciate what you're doing and the
Thank you.
work and the time that you put into this, and hopefully you're getting something out of it.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
it's fun.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fun meeting different aspects of business. I mean, we take different business classes, but having actually the professors one-on-one, talk about finance, talking about business law, talking about marketing.
Marketing,
It really throws us for the perspective again.
Yeah.
Maybe we can even be our own business owners in the future.
Yeah. Is there any last final tips or anything that you maybe want to, or anything that we didn't cover that you maybe want to talk about?
I think that's just a great big picture for today as far as the way to avoid risk is to do nothing. That's not really an option for entrepreneurs. So
Mhm.
there is going to be some risk. You can limit your liabilities with LLCs and entity formation. You can transfer risk using insurance. And you can just be optimistic and go out and do great things. And if you fail, you'll learn from mistakes and do great things when you bounce back.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and it was awesome to hear from you, and we're really happy that you came on the show. So a big shout out to you for
my
taking the
pleasure.
time.
Yes, thank you.
And we hope that this information helps you stay bold and to shape the future.
Oh, hey! Fancy seeing you here. Hope you make it to our next episode.